Hello, this is Jake, and I'll be presenting our achievement report, which focuses on our MCA and FASTBridge scores for reading, math, and science. As you know, we adopted 5 district goals and key strategies in 2023. I think we could make an argument that all of our goals and strategies must align with student achievement, and I'm not going to go through all of them, so I pulled out the ones that I think are the most important. This includes Goal 1. Our graduates are prepared to achieve their goals and aspirations. The strategies under that are all aligned for student achievement and include ensuring students are college and career ready, delivering a challenging, joyful, and safe learning environment, and delivering an innovative, effective practices and systems. Our second goal is that our learners contribute to an equitable, caring society. For growth and achievement to occur, we need our students to feel connected and proud of their accomplishments. We do this through engagement, interest, and relevance, as well as students genuinely enjoying learning. As our strategy states, cultivating student engagement and joy in learning. And our Goal 3, we are a culturally responsive, inclusive, anti-racist district. We ensure that educator commitment to anti-racist practices, hire and retain a diverse workforce, develop equitable leaders, build a culture of belonging where all feel welcome, included, and safe. All of these things contribute to a culture of learning and high achievement, where students all feel a sense of belonging and a commitment to growth. We know that achievement tests are typically a one-time snapshot that don't always provide a great look at individual growth or achievement. However, they do provide us with district trends over time and an overall summary of how well we're meeting the state standards as a system. They also provide us with a look at disparities that may exist. Disparities by socioeconomic status, languages spoken, race, or ability. Without reviewing these tests with an equitable eye on the outcomes, some of our data can hide disparities and inequitable outcomes. In Roseville area schools, we look for the disparities and identify them. As Jim Collins discusses in his book, Good to Great, as an organization, we have to confront the brutal facts, but never lose faith. We continue to have brutal facts in our data, and yet have faith that we are working to improve our systems for our students and families so that all students can achieve. We're not there yet, that's a brutal fact, but we'll never stop trying. I also want to acknowledge that we don't blame our students for our results. When we review our data, we know that we are not reaching all kids in the way that they learn best. That's on us to improve as educators. We also know that this one snapshot does not encompass all of the important things that are not tested about our students, including their sense of wonder, their critical thinking, their endurance, persistence, and determination, or their humor and curiosity. So we acknowledge that these tests are not all-encompassing, but important for us to use to face our brutal facts about how we need to change as a system to continue to improve for our students. Before we look at our achievement data, we'll review some key demographic areas of our district that help to shape our community and the district and who we serve as a district. This provides you all and our community about our changing demographics and how our student groups compare to the state averages in Minnesota. A reminder that this report is a look back at the last school year and that we receive our Minnesota comprehensive scores in the summer and report on them publicly in the fall. The graphic at the top of this slide shows the percentage of students who receive educational benefits, comparing our students in Roseville to the statewide average. Just a reminder, heads up, that the educational benefits are benefits that students receive if their family income is at or below certain thresholds. This can include free or reduced meals, transportation, athletics, and activities, and other areas. For educational benefits, the trend shows that since the turn of the century, we have more than tripled in our students that qualify for educational benefits, and now about half of our students qualify. The state has also shown a steady increase from the year 2000. For our multilingual learners, Roseville and the state of Minnesota were similar at the turn of the century, but Roseville has outpaced the state and continues to show an increase in our percent of students who are multilingual learners. This slide looks at students with an individualized education program and students who identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. For students with an IEP, both Roseville and the state have shown increases over the years. The state average continues to be a little higher than Roseville. For our BIPOC students, students in Roseville and the state continue to be more racially diverse. However, Roseville has outpaced the state in the percentage of BIPOC students. We have about tripled since the turn of the century, whereas the state has more than doubled. As we showed through the last few slides, we've become less comparable to the state. However, we are comparable to other communities and districts around the state of Minnesota. We often look at the data from these districts to see how we compare in terms of student achievement. The districts you see on this slide include Bloomington, Burnsville, North St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale, Osseo, Robbinsdale, Austin, Inver Grove Heights, West St. Paul, Mendota Heights, Roseville, and the state of Minnesota overall. This graph shows all of the demographic comparison areas that we discussed on the previous slides. Also, these school districts have around the same student enrollment as Roseville. We'll start with a review of our reading data. This slide shows the trend of Roseville area schools in blue compared to the statewide average in red. It includes 6 years of trend data, all based on the MCA3 reading test. Please note that the 2021 school year data is included but is not a comparable data year because of the pandemic and based on the limited number of students taking the test. That year is not representative of our typical testing. You'll also notice that 2020 is not included. That was the year that all state testing was canceled. For reading, the tested grades are 3 through 8 and grade 10. In reading, students in Roseville area schools are about 45.5% proficient, while the state average is 49.6% proficient. We remain about 4 percentage points below the statewide average, and both Roseville and the state stayed about the same proficiency rates from the previous year. We were consistently following the statewide trend since 2019, but had a dip last year and stayed flat from the previous school year. Both Roseville area schools and the state have declined in scores since the pandemic. This slide shows Roseville area schools compared to Minnesota in reading proficiency by grade over the past 3 years. In Roseville, we see gains in grades 5, 6, 7, and 8 from 2024. 8th grade students had the highest gains from the previous year at 5.3 percentage points, and 7th grade outperformed the statewide average. Statewide, only grades 7 and 8 had proficiency increases. Grade 10 is still marked with an asterisk as our participation rates in MCA testing improves. We have more comparable numbers of students participating in the 2024 and 2025 MCAs to participation before the pandemic. This slide shows trend data for our students by race and ethnicity. Our American Indian, Native American, and white students increased from the 2024 school year. The disparity between American Indian and Native American students and white students decreased by about 2 percentage points. However, disparities for all other groups by race and ethnicity increased. The racial disparity between student groups persists and ranges from 22 to 46 percentage points. This slide provides trend data for our students who qualify for educational benefits, students with an individual education plan or IEP, and students who are English language learners. Our students who receive educational benefits had reading achievement increases in proficiency over the previous year, while the other groups showed decreases. This slide compares proficiency for our student groups to the statewide average for that group. 2024 is in dark blue and 2025 is in light blue. We see that our American Indian, Native American, and white students both improved from the previous year and performed above their statewide counterparts. This slide provides us with a look at how we relate to our comparable districts and includes data for over the past 3 years. Our comparable districts had a reading proficiency average of 41% in the 2025 school year. We performed above that and were the third highest of our comparable districts. 5 of the 8 districts decreased in their proficiency rate from the previous year, and only 2 showed small improvements. This slide shows our schools' reading achievement over a 3-year trend. Falcon Heights, Parkview, and Rams saw increases in proficiency compared to the 2024 school year. Central Park and Falcon Heights both continue to outperform their 2019 scores prior to the pandemic. Most of our other schools remained the same or saw decreases from the previous year. This slide shows A reading growth for all students in grades 2 through 8. A reading is an adaptive reading test, which mostly tests students' reading skill and comprehension. Growth in FASTBridge is broken into 4 different categories: aggressive, typical, modest, and flat. We want to see low flat growth and high aggressive growth. Overall, we see a decline in the flat growth from 23-24, along with a decline in aggressive growth. We also see increases in typical and modest growth. However, to change proficiency, we really need to see a decline in flat growth coupled with higher aggressive growth rates. This is the same data in the previous slide, except it's disaggregated by race and ethnicity. For context, we included our American Indian, Native American group on the slide. However, we didn't have enough students take the test to publicly report the results. All of our student groups by race decreased in their flat growth, which is always good. However, most of our student groups also saw either a decline or no increase in their aggressive growth percentage. We do see that multiracial students had the highest rate of decrease in their flat growth. This slide shows auto reading growth for all students in grades 4 through 8. The auto reading test is an additional test that can be added to the A reading for the upper grades to test students on their foundational skills, including word identification, decoding, morphology, and matching synonyms. For all students in auto reading, we had about the same amount of typical and aggressive growth from the previous year. When looking at auto reading by student groups, we see that Hispanic and Black students had the highest amounts of improvement in their levels of typical and aggressive growth. Although not shown in our slides, when reviewing our growth by schools, we see that Brimhall, Edgerton, Emmett D. Williams, and Little Canada all had combined typical and aggressive growth scores above 65%. And Brimhall and Emmett D. Williams had aggressive growth percent above 40%. The early reading and CBM reading tests are provided at our early elementary grades and are individually administered to students. In early reading, students show their basic beginning reading skills in grades K and 1. In the CBM reading, students read a passage to an assessor, and those are for grades 2 and 3. These charts show the growth levels over time. Overall, in early reading, we had an increase in typical growth with a significant decrease in students showing flat growth. Taken together, 64% of our students had either aggressive or typical growth, which is promising for our earliest readers. Although not shown in our slides, Central Park, Emmett D. Williams, Falcon Heights, and Parkview all had over 65% of students with a combined typical and aggressive growth rate for their youngest students. In CBM reading, we had overall improvement in our typical growth along with a decrease in our flat growth from the previous year. Highlights for CBM reading from buildings include Central Park, Falcon Heights, and Parkview, which all had strong combined typical and aggressive growth scores above 65%. And Brimhall, Central Park, Emmett D. Williams, Falcon Heights, and Parkview all had flat growth declines. This slide shows the same FASTBridge tests, early reading and CBM reading, but only for the 2024-25 school year and broken down by race and ethnicity. In early reading, most of our student groups by race saw a decrease in flat growth from the previous year and saw increases in typical growth. Asian, Black, Hispanic, and white students were all above average for both combined typical and aggressive growth. In CBM reading, Black and white students showed increases in their combined growth scores for typical and aggressive growth. Black students also showed a 10 percentage point increase in aggressive growth from the previous school year. So this is some points to remember as a reading summary. We maintained our MCA proficiency level from 2024. We were 4 percentage points below the state. We outperformed most of our comparable districts. Grades 5, 6, 7, and 8 increased proficiency, and 7th grade outperformed the state. Falcon Heights, Parkview, and Rams increased from 2024. Our Native American and American Indian students' racial disparity decreased, while most other groups increased. We see higher amounts of aggressive and typical growth for our kindergarten and first grade students. This is our response to reading. So literacy, we believe, is and continues to be the social justice issue of our time. We continue to put resources and put efforts into literacy improvements, especially at our earliest grades, including pre-K and elementary. We invested the most in elementary literacy materials for any curriculum purchase just a few years ago. The materials include Wit and Wisdom, Amplify, Foundations, and Haggerty, which all focus on the science of reading and structured literacy. Last year was our second year of implementation, and we expect to see proficiency changes in a few years. In terms of reading proficiency, impacts that will be seen with our youngest students as they age up to the MCA reading test. Almost all K through 4 teachers have been trained in the science of reading and structured literacy instructional practices. They were trained in letters with over 150 hours of training over the last 2 years. Our pre-K teachers also have all gone through Letters for Early Childhood program as well. This year, our 5th and 6th grade teachers who didn't go through Letters will be trained in Carryall. This is a structured literacy program through the University of Minnesota. Carryall stands for the Center for Applied Research and Educational Improvement, Advancing Language and Literacy. We continue to provide reading screening 3 times per year in grades K through 8, and intervention supports are provided to students. We also secured funding through the MDE, Minnesota Department of Education, for the Alternative Delivery for Specialized Educational Services, or ADSIS, for about $1 million of reimbursement support, which includes staff to provide interventions to students in literacy, math, and behavior. We trained all of our secondary special education, intervention, multilingual learner, and alternative high school teachers on the science of reading and structured literacy last year through Carryall. We started working with our secondary English language arts teachers in a mini curriculum review to assure alignment in materials and alignment in using the 2020 Minnesota ELA standards. We continue to provide avid WICOR strategies for our students throughout our secondary. The R in WICOR stands for reading and is an area of focus and support in our classes. We continue to have an equity advancement literacy lead to provide support and oversight to our literacy programs district-wide. And this year we're excited to have Dr. Clarissa Jackson join us as the literacy lead. She helped to develop and lead Carryall training at the University of Minnesota. Now we'll shift to our math achievement data. For context, this slide includes 6 years of trend data, all based on the MCA3 math test, to include the scores that we had prior to the pandemic and scores post-pandemic. Again, school year 2021 does not include all students and is not comparable to other years of data in terms of the number of students participating. Roseville area schools is in blue, Minnesota statewide average is in red. In math, Roseville area schools remained about even with the 2024 results, and the state remained about even as well. District-wide, we see about the same proficiency rate as we've seen in previous years since the pandemic. We are now at 37.8% proficiency for all grades 3 through 8 and 11, which is about 7.5 points lower than the statewide average. We are about 11 percentage points lower in math than we were prior to the pandemic in 2019. This data is comparing our overall MCA scores to the statewide average for each grade. Math scores in grades 7 and 11 improved over last school year. Grade 7 improved by 2.1 percentage points, and grade 11 improved by 4.4 percentage points. Overall, grade 7 has improved 12 percentage points over the last 3 years. All grade levels in 2024 were below the statewide averages. All grade levels in 2025 were below the statewide averages. This trend line shows our students who qualify for educational benefits, students with an individual education program, and students who are multilingual learners. We see proficiency decreases for all these groups in the 2025 school year. This slide compares our district proficiency percent for each of our student groups compared to the statewide proficiency percentages. American Indian, Native American, white students, and multiracial students increased and performed better than the statewide average for their counterparts. This slide looks at the Roseville area schools compared to our comparison districts for the past 3 years. Roseville outperformed 5 comparable districts, and most districts showed decreases from the previous year, whereas Roseville maintained proficiency from 2024. This slide shows MCA math scores for the past 3 years. Central Park, Edgerton, Falcon Heights, Harambe, Parkview, and Rams all increased in math proficiency from 2023. With their continued proficiency increases over the past 3 years, Central Park is now 9 percentage points above their 2019 pre-pandemic proficiency rate. These next 2 slides switch from MCA data to FASTBridge math data. In this slide, we are looking at growth for all of our students tested on early math and A math. This is the first year that we have early math data for our youngest students in KN1, which measures early math concepts like number identification, number sequencing, decomposing numbers, place value, and story problems. We had 64% of our students in either typical or aggressive growth, which is above average. Many of our sites, including Edgerton, Emmett D. Williams, and Little Canada, had extremely strong typical and aggressive growth scores, over 70%. Little Canada had 3/4 of their students at either aggressive or typical growth, and Emmett D. Williams had 41% of their students at aggressive growth. This year includes all students in 2 through 8 for A math. In FASTBridge A math growth, we had about the same amount of growth in typical and aggressive as last year. However, we see a decrease in flat growth. This slide shows the growth for our student groups by race and ethnicity for early math and A math. In early math, we see that Hispanic and white students had the highest amount of students with typical and aggressive growth. For A math, we see that black and white students had the highest amount of aggressive growth and the lowest amounts of flat growth. In other A math data, Falcon Heights, Little Canada, and Rams had strong combined typical and aggressive growth rates combined with low rates of flat growth. This is our math summary and some points to remember. Our MCA math scores remained even with 2024, and so did the state. Grade 7 and 11 saw proficiency increases on the MCA. Grade 7 has improved 12 percentage points over the last 3 years. Our racial disparities decreased, including Asian, American Indian, Native American, and multiracial students that saw decreases. Our racial disparities, although, continued to be persistently too high. Our proficiency increases include Central Park, Edgerton, Parkview, Rams, and Roz. Our proficiency percentage increased over time at Central Park, which was about 10 points since 2019, Edgerton, which was 12 points since 2022, and Rams had 7-point increase since 2023. We show high typical and aggressive growth in early math and decreases in flat growth for A math. And here is our response. We continue to partner with Dr. James Brickwitty to provide cognitively guided instruction, or CGI, professional development to our teachers in K-8. This summer we had more than 20 teachers take a week-long training which continues over the school year. Rather than a math program or curriculum, CGI is a way of listening to students, asking questions, and engaging with their thinking, all with the goal of uncovering and exploring and expanding every student's mathematical understanding. At RAMS, our math teams have focused on standards and aligning their common assessments to MDA standards and proficiency levels. Both K-6 and 7-12 math curriculum review teams continue their work this year to match with the MDE rollout of new math standards in school year 2027 and 2028. We continue to offer MCA testing at the high school level during the school day rather than a separate testing day for 10th and 11th grade students, which has improved our test participation. And we're now providing math screening 3 times a year in grades K through 8 with supports and some intervention work provided to students. We'll briefly review a summary of MCA science information in this next slide. So some of the interesting things for science: we tested the Science MCA4 for the first time in spring of 2025. It was a test for science in grades 3, 5, and high school. Our results will be available later this fall, and we cannot compare the MCA4 to MCA3, which was the former test. And this is based on new science standards. We'll have a time to do some questions and discussion at our upcoming DCAC meeting. Thanks for listening.